There's nothing they can do. For a year now, they have not been able to interdict the delivery of equipment coming from Poland. They have not been able to do that at all. They don't have the ability to. Their Air Force is incapable of doing what we call dynamic targeting, where they can detect a train that's coming and then they can go find it and hit it, or a convoy. Russia is wasting all of its multi-million-dollar precision weapons against apartment buildings and power generators. So, I mean, there's nothing else they can do. Their so-called mobilization appears to me to once again be unsuccessful, or they delayed it or whatever. I mean, it was such a disaster back in September when they did a partial mobilization, and 500,000 Russian military-age males left the country to avoid being mobilized. And we saw that the Russian Ministry of Defense was not prepared with accommodation, equipment, training, uniforms, basic things. And so I don't think they've fixed all those problems. And so what they do, they bring in bodies from all over the Russian Federation, and with a minimum amount of training, push them into the meat grinder without concern about how many thousands of these unfortunate Russian soldiers are killed in the process. So I'm not seeing evidence yet of any special new thing that they could do. Think about how impressive is the performance of Ukrainian defenders. I mean, this war started almost 9 years ago, in 2014, with Russia having all the advantages. And then the special military operation started a year ago, with Russia having all the advantages, except that Ukraine was defending their home. And still, after all of this, Russia is still trying to capture Bakhmut. I mean, that tells you something about the quality of Ukraine's defense with what they have, the quality of Ukrainian people compared to Russian capability. And and of course, and your listeners know, Bakhmut is so far in the eastern part of Ukraine. I keep my map of Ukraine with me all the time, and so when I look, Bakhmut is here, all in the far eastern part of Ukraine. It's useful to keep in mind this terrible fighting, and of course, Ukraine is suffering casualties. It is so far to the east, and that's the best the Russians can do. I think that what General Cavoli, the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, said is true, that precision can defeat mass, that Russian mass infantry requires Russian mass artillery support. How do you defeat mass artillery? You destroy headquarters, you destroy ammunition storage sites, and you destroy transportation network required to move artillery ammunition. If you destroy those three things, it doesn't matter how many artillery tubes, Russian artillery, there is, and then the Russian mass infantry does not get the support it needs to have any chance of advancing against Ukrainian defenders. So the sooner that we can get the longer range precision weapons, the longer range than what is already available for HIMARS, then you can destroy Russian headquarters, Russian ammunition storage, Russian transportation. That's how we do this. Ukraine's Air Force has been incredible. What they have done throughout the war, even though they have been outnumbered, they have surprised the world with how well they have been able to resist Russian Air Force attempts, and the failure of Russia to achieve air superiority in the early days was also quite a surprise to Air Force professionals. I think this is due in part to Ukraine's Air Force and Ukraine's air defense, as well as poor management and lack of training by Russian Air Force. There's no doubt that a Ukrainian pilot could learn to operate an F-16 or other Western aircraft very, very quickly, much quicker than it would take a normal pilot starting, especially if you had a Ukrainian pilot that was already experienced. But I think that what's key is that the West helps Ukraine with long-range precision weapons, whether that's an F-16 or ATACMS or drones or small diameter bombs, things that have longer range that are needed to isolate Crimea and to make Crimea untenable for Russian forces. Crimea is the decisive part of this war. That's what Ukraine has to liberate this year. And so all of these systems, including F-16s or A-10s, would help in doing that, as well as, of course, providing ground support to Ukrainian armored force that would be used to penetrate Russian defenses. There is no one system that changes everything. So I try to stay away from too much conversation about a specific platform, a specific weapon, and instead talk about capability. That's why I emphasize the importance of long-range precision and a strong armored force, whatever the systems are. The F-16 clearly is the right platform that's needed for a variety of reasons, but I can't explain why the administration is still reluctant to do this. They probably will eventually do it. I mean, that's the way this has been going all year. I think we are overly cautious about Russia escalation to a nuclear conflict, which I just absolutely do not believe that they will do. The process for delivering things has been incremental, and for different reasons. I wish it had been quicker. The decisions would be made sooner. I do believe that good people are overly concerned about the possibility of a nuclear escalation, so they're being very cautious in what they provide. I think that also, I mean, there are various legal reasons, and so keeping the alliance together it has also been an important part of this, getting all the NATO countries plus the other countries, more than 50 nations together, who are still providing capability, not as fast as needed, but it's coming. I think tanks will be an important contribution to Ukraine's ability to penetrate Russian defenses later this year, when the general staff determines that the time is right. So whether they're there now or if they're ready to be used in 2 months or whatever, I think the general staff will make the best decision on how to integrate these new tanks, mostly Leopards, that will be very good and welcome additions to Ukrainian armored force.